And so, mm, mm. Being here as the silence, being here as the openness, where there is no one here, just silence, just openness, just the simple presence of being. Can only meet yourself in the openness that you are, in the absence of someone. There is true openness. The openness that is pure subjectivity. The pure subjectivity can never be an object. The mind is constantly looking for an object, a goal, something to achieve and land on. But this true nature is not an object. It is the pure subjectivity in which all objects are happening as patterns of consciousness. But you are the pure subject, you are the openness. Not you as someone, but your true nature. The one true nature of all beings is the openness of simply being. There is nothing to know. It is just about being yourself. Cannot create a doing, can only be here now. We could say patiently waiting, without waiting for something and without someone waiting. How does that feel? It's freedom. Because you are not waiting for something, you're not looking for a goal, not looking for an object. And there is no one here trying to achieve something for the me. Of course, the me, the mind, cannot understand this. It can go round and around in circles. But let us say that the going around and around in circles eventually exhausts the mind, and the mind gives up because it cannot solve, it cannot find an answer. And when the mind gives up, the discovery is that you are the living answer. You are the silence. When only silence is here, when there is no one looking for silence, creating a mood of silence, imagining that the quietness is silence, when there is no one here attempting to create anything, when there is no one here anticipating something is going to happen, when there is no one here analyzing this moment according to its knowledge, attempting to find an answer, the discovery is that you already are. You see, there's nothing to discover that is new or different. It's about removing the veils and the ideas and concepts that act as the veiling, act as the obscurations, to that which you already are, the true being that you already are. So as these words come, it is only ever to receive the resonance. If you try to follow with the mind in order to get something, you will start to tie yourself in knots. These are the knots where the mind goes around and around in circles, trying to understand, trying to get it, and eventually it will exhaust itself, likely in a puddle of frustration or judgment because there's nothing to get for the mind. Let us say that the frustration, the disappointment, the meltdown of the mind is grace. Because where the mind gives up, the discovery of what is still here, what is alive here, when the mind cannot make sense, what is here, let's say, that makes sense, but not to the mind. It makes sense to be yourself. It's the only thing that is true. The only truth is to be yourself here now. And so the beauty is, as these words come, to receive the resonance. If there's no, let's say, if there's no connecting in with the resonance on a level of it falling into a landing of truth, like a recognition level of landing, then just relax and let the words just come. Let the words just come. Let there be no understanding, no need to understand. Just listen as if it is a soft, gentle music with no lyrics. You don't need to analyze the music. You don't need to understand it. Just let it carry you, right? And if there starts to be a resonant landing of recognition, we could say it will feel like, oh, I can get what these words are pointing to, where you feel like you can follow in truth. Follow in truth in the ever-deepening resonance. Only receive the pointing in the here now. Only receive the immediacy of the pointing. Do not hang on to anything. Because as soon as there's a sense of hanging on, you're in the mind trying to make sense, trying to grasp. And in truth, everything has to be let go of in order for the resonance of true nature to be recognized on its own level, on the level of being, in the realm of the innermost being. Only the being itself can know itself. Only silence itself can know itself. When it stands alone, without any interceptors, without anyone or anything attempting to understand or get something, right? So as these words come, the mind will try to understand and attempt to work out how it can be successful at letting go, how it can be successful at not trying, how can it be successful at not wanting to achieve anything, not having a spiritual ambition? How can it be successful at not anticipating, not wanting, not desiring, not evaluating, not judging? The mind will attempt to work out how it can be successful, but it's got nothing to do with that. So it's just to let the mind play in its own limited arena, but to recognize right here now in this moment that you are the aware being that is aware of the mind. Simply be here now and recognize that you are aware of mind. You're aware of thoughts that are coming and going. You're aware of all activity of mind. All activity of mind is moving and changing, ebbing and flowing. But this felt sense of just being here, this felt sense of being that is aware of the moving, changing, is not in itself moving and changing, and is not touched in any way by that which is moving and changing. Simply to be aware of the moving, changing, without trying to make sense, without tying yourself in knots, attempting to get something, without listening to the mind, giving any kind of narrative. Simply be aware. And this is where it takes a courage and a vigilance. It takes a courage and a vigilance to just be here. Can also say that it very much depends on the refinement of the nervous system, the ability to stay present, the ability to be presence itself and remain. It comes through, let us say, a practice, because the learned habit is to constantly go towards the mind. This is where meditation is a useful practice to bring about a refined enough nervous system that is not constantly zapping around, jumping around at the command of the mind. And so if there's a feeling that the presence feels like it's constantly disappearing and you're constantly going towards the mind, it's just to keep coming back very gently, very kindly. Keep coming back, keep coming back. Not with any, let's say, not with a sense of efforting, trying, but just a very gentle falling back to the felt sense of being here. The felt sense I am. The felt sense of your own presence. Just being here before any thoughts, to feel the simplicity of your own existence. Just to rest here. And this is where we could say that to recognize the I am, I am, I am. Just being, just being, just being. Here now, here now, here now. It acts like a mantra meditation that just settles you into this moment and the felt sense of being. The more that the nervous system is able to rest here, you will fall into the being the presence, being the transcendental field, being the simple being that just is. You will feel the felt sense of this truth and how being the being brings forward an alive quality of knowing, which is not in the realm of mind and thinking or understanding. That true knowing is in the realm of being itself. Being, simply being, knows itself. Presence, just being present, recognizes its own simple presence. And there's nothing to understand. There's no one here. It's not a mental understanding. It's simpler than that. It's before that. It's subtler than that. Right? So, what is important is to be where you are in truth and not to listen to the mind and to allow the mind to distract. But if the mind is attempting to sabotage and distract, it's just to watch it. It's so incredibly simple, but the mind cannot do watching it. It's just to come to the felt sense of being, be aware, and be aware of the mind's antics. Very, very simply, We're not trying to stop the mind. We're not creating moods. We're not creating anything. We're just finding out what is here underneath all of the moving, changing patternings of the mind, underneath the conditioning, underneath the learned behaviors. What is here that doesn't move and change? What is here that feels like yourself and your own existence, that does not have any movement in its nature, is still by nature, is aware by nature, is open and simple by nature. It is to know that whatever is happening in your direct experience, at some point, the refinement will come, the resting will come, and grace will carry you into true nature, right? This can only happen by grace. So let us say that there is a quality to tap into that is innate within your being, and that is trusting the truth of who you are, trusting the being. And in a way, this trust is really a true faith. It's something that's not believing in something, but it's a resonant knowing that has kept you companion your whole life. It's a deep resonant knowing, a trust, a faith in your own true nature that just is. And there's something so simple and profound to this. It can be very touching to, let's say, remember this, because the remembering of it brings a foretaste. It brings a taste of your true nature. It brings you right to the edge of the cliff, let's say, because you recognize, oh yes, there is something here that is part of my nature, that has faith, that does know. It's what has kept you. We could say it's what has kept you seeking. In truth, if the seeking shifted to the internal, to just the being, and not to the external, then there's a falling in. But in a way, your faith is what has kept you seeking in the external even. But now it is to feel the faith, your deep faith, the knowing that's already here, and allow this faith to pull you into this moment, to pull you into trusting this moment. You're not trusting someone. You're trusting a deep sense that at times in the life will have come forward more strongly and given you glimpses, tastes of your own emptiness, glimpses of your own clear, transparent openness, right? But it's not about holding on to any experience or trying to recreate experience. It's just recognizing that life has been peppered with these glimpses, with these experiences, with deep recognitions that seem to have come and gone. But really, what these experiences have been, we could say, have been moments where the veiling has fallen away and you have just seen your true nature, felt your true essence, that there's been a silence that has revealed a quality of truth where knowing was alive. And that knowing that we could say was alive, is alive here right now. So we're not referencing past. We're not referencing past at all. We're referencing this moment so deeply in order to recognize that every glimpse, every taste has only ever been a taste of the timeless, eternal nature. Every glimpse has only happened in the presence of now. Every taste has only happened when time has stopped, where you have escaped time, where you have escaped location, to be here so fully present in your own nature as timeless, eternal, infinite being. And you have instantaneously, spontaneously tasted a value of your essence that was a deep remembering. And that remembering is still here. It's not an experience that's come and gone. That is still here underneath the play of the world and the habit to identify with things. There is this pure subjectivity, a pure, spacious, infinite field of being that you are. And every taste, every glimpse has been of this same infinite field. Every being has tasted this. There is no one that has not tasted this. You came into, let's say you came into your human birth fully aware in this knowing, fully pure, immaculate. And through the life, to varying degrees, let's say, forgetting happens to various degrees, but there's usually not a full forgetting, right? And as these words come, you can recognize it. Again, it's not to reference a story to get hooked in, but it's just to stir this trust, this faith, this knowing that's always been here. If you are in satsang now, it's very unlikely that you have ever completely forgotten your true nature. It's very likely that your young life had all sorts of mysterious felt senses that no one else understood. And when no one else understood them, it carried you into your internal world. By the grace of God, you felt like you didn't belong. You felt separate and cut off, but it carried you into an internal world where there's something real and true and pure and safe that was and is your true nature. It's still here. It's still alive. It's your knowing. And throughout the life, in various ways, there will have been happenings, flashes, glimpses, tastes of various depths that will have brought you into the felt sense of remembering. And then let us say through satsang and your deeper search, you will have had deeper and deeper recognitions, glimpses, tastes of your true nature. You will have fallen into the awe, the wonder, the timeless truth of who you are. Often there's a falling in, but if there is not someone that catches you in the timeless zone and says, this is who you are, it can pass by and doubt will come in, or there won't even be a noticing. There will be a mental evaluation that says, wow, I had this wild experience, right? Wow, I felt so joyous and peaceful. I saw this light. I felt a holiness. I felt devotion. I felt free. But there wouldn't necessarily be a referencing that would say, this is my true nature, okay? This is what happens, is that so many times in the life, sometimes daily, sometimes more than once a day, there's a falling into this. When falling asleep and waking in the morning, you're in true nature, a quality of true nature. Of course, in deep sleep, you are in true nature, but not consciously awake to true nature. But if there is not an aliveness to reference that this is your true nature, so that the innermost being recognizes itself, then it can pass by as just an experience. But the knowing is that if you are here in satsang, what is being spoken now will bring alive a quality of remembering. It is not to go to a mental patchworking of all your experiences, okay? That will be a complete distraction, and that is not why these words are coming forward. These words are coming forward to bring forward the joyous recognition that you have faith in your true nature. You have a deep knowing that is already alive of something that is essence, timeless, holy, sacred, free, infinite, beautiful, happy, joyous, peaceful. Any or all of these words will bring you to a remembering that you do have a faith, and that which you have touched into, let's say, is always here. It is the eternal, ever-present truth of who you are. It is the realm of infinite consciousness that is always here. It is reality that is always here. And your consciousness has met itself many times and just remembered itself. Teeny nano flashes, sometimes deeper drinks, right? So it's as if you have fallen into yourself. Oh, and you've seen yourself. And then you've come back into the learned, mental, conditioned realm, because that's where you were taught to live, right? This is where the person has been taught to live. You've been taught to be a person. So this process, let's say, this play, is about remembering who you are before personhood, before everything that you have learned, before you have been conditioned by the worldly, who you have always been and who you have remained to be through the life, in essence, in true nature, underneath the play of a life. You have always been your true self. So we are unraveling the tangle that creates a sense of identification in order that you come back more fully into this essence nature, the infinite, eternal essence nature that is silence, that is peace, that is pure awareness, that is simply aware. And when awareness is aware of itself, it recognizes its happy, natural beingness, not as a mood, not as anything that comes and goes, not even as a state. It's before that. So, every being has the capacity to remember the truth of who you are, because every being is the true being. You never ever have been anything other than yourself. In truth, this is not a process in time. It's not progressive. There's a play of it being progressive, but it's not progressive. There's a process in time of eliminating and refining the nervous system so that the learned habit to identify with objects starts to relax, and that you can hold a quality of presence with your own presence, that when you are present to your own presence, when you are still in your essence, when you are silent in your essence, you can fall more deeply into the infinite field of conscious being that you are. It's not a doing. As these words come, the mind could make a doing out of this. The mind could make a progressive journey out of this. But that's just interpretation from a perspective of seeing as someone. So the someone creates an interpretive, conceptual understanding of these words that may seem progressive, may seem like instruction, may seem like a doing, but true nature can feel a resonance which points to what only is here now, points to who you are now, brings you to the immediate seeing that you are not the person, brings you to the immediate seeing of your own presence being your true nature, the silent, still, aware being your true nature. All pointings are only bringing you to the now. They are never pointing you to something other. They're never pointing you to a state or an experience or something to gain. True pointings are only ever in the immediacy of now and an open invitation into openness itself. An open invitation to openness itself. And so as these words come, it is only ever to feel the resonance of what is coming forward, just to receive the resonance. At some point, there will be a landing where you will feel yourself as the enlivened field of silence. You will feel yourself in remembering. You will feel yourself in essence. You will feel this faith that is being spoken of, alive, like an illumination, a remembering, a recognition, and it is not in the mental realm. Let's say to start with, it's in the bliss body. It's like a falling into a very simple, peaceful presence. And as you rest in presence, it's as if there is a sense of expansion. You're not someone that's expanding. If you let go of being someone having an experience and you just feel the felt sense, that sense of expanding is like an immediate recognition that you are the expansive field. You're not someone expanding to have an experience. It's that someone disappears, the contraction relaxes, and you are the expanded, vast, infinite field of being. And you immediately feel yourself as being everywhere, being without location, being the infinite presence of being. You can feel a sense that you are here. You feel yourself, your existence. And yet the felt sense of existence is not located within your body. The felt sense of existence has no location. Look for it now. Look for it in your direct felt experience. Do not look with the mind, because that will send you into a tangle. Look in your felt sense of experience. Explore the pointings only ever in the immediacy of your direct experience in the now. Feel yourself. Feel the felt sense of existence. Come to notice, are there any edges? If you feel an edge, approach the edge. Find out what it's made of. If you feel a substance, feel more deeply into the substance. until it utterly dissolves, until you can confirm there are no edges, there are no boundaries. You're feeling it in the sensation, in the aliveness of your direct experience of your very own present existence here now. What we could say is that what you are truly feeling and sensing into is your own nervous system, right? So if your nervous system is soft and gentle and relaxed and is not jumping around towards the mind, if your nervous system is able to just relax, then you're starting to feel the more subtle qualities of your nervous system. And your nervous system, great glory, is consciousness. It's your direct access to the vast infinite field of consciousness. We could say that your nervous system is not your own personal nervous system, it is a cosmic nervous system. And when you start to feel the relaxation in your nervous system, you immediately access the vast open field of consciousness. And you feel indirect experience in the felt sense, that vastness, that unboundedness, that everywhereness, that nowhereness. So explore this now as these words are coming. And in this sense of vastness, you start to feel the knowing, you start to feel your faith, your essence nature is here, right? Don't let the words that describe it get taken by the mind that say, oh, well, it isn't that, so it must be wrong, right? Because the mind can intercept so quickly. Just let the words be very soft pointers and let your own, let's say, the authority in your direct experience be what guides you, where you feel the resonance of truth. You could say, if the words here come that it feels light or spacious, you might feel, well, I wouldn't say spacious, I would say open. Okay, let's not go into that little mind play with words. Just let openness be your word, the word of the being in your internal openness. It's okay, right? So allow the words to be very organic and fluid. Let the words come from being. Don't let the mind co-opt and try to create right and wrong and differentiation. Don't let the mind take the direct experience and make it an object. Rest as the openness. Rest as emptiness where there is no one. Can you feel in this felt sense of vastness, of just being, that is infinite and open, that there's not a sense of being someone, and yet there is a sense that you are here, but you're not in the body, you're everywhere. Feel this, notice this. Notice there's a familiarity in this. There's a freedom in this. Don't try to put any boxes around it. Don't try to label it or contain this. The words are not pointing in order to contain. The words are coming to open possibilities of seeing in your direct experience this essence nature of who you are. It comes as remembering. It comes as recognition. It comes as a quality of truth that has a vivid, familiar, recognizable knowing. So we're speaking of the infinite, omnipresent nature that is the being that you are everywhere. So this felt sense of expanding, when you let go of being someone expanding, you recognize, oh, boom, expansion just happened. And it's actually a relaxation. And there's a spontaneous felt sense that you are the expanded, vast, open field of being. Mm-hmm. And so now feel your existence and this felt sense of being now. Feel the nowness, the presence, the immediacy, that there's no time here. And that this felt sense has always been the same. This felt sense is always now. That there's no progression or no time. There's a felt sense that's immediate, that's now, that's alive with its nowness. It's your own presence, present to itself. And again, this is your nervous system having the ability to be so present to itself that you fall out of the learned habit of time and you meet the timeless moment, and you are the timeless moment. And there's a remembering that you're just here, timeless, eternal. The eternal is the felt sense that this has always been the same, never changed. Of course, the mind cannot understand because the mind is in time. The mind is constantly engaged in either someone who is present or in a past or in a future, right? So can you feel the openness, the spaciousness? When you are not in time, you are timeless. Can you feel here now and confirm that there is no past or present in this felt sense of being? If the mind comes in, mind will bring time, and mind will bring the relationship and attachment to past, which will have the possibility of bringing conditioning and those patterns of conditioning and thought waves and triggers and resistances that happen when you're in relationship with past. And your nervous system will feel these. Your nervous system will get stirred. And when your nervous system, which is your consciousness, gets stirred by relationship and attachment to past, then your relaxation into the being gets overshadowed by these patterns of ebbs and flows in consciousness, and identification takes place with story, with past, and suddenly you're in a feeling of a unique unique individual nervous system, and you feel like a me, right? So follow these words as a felt sense resonance. They are explaining the intelligence of how consciousness moves from being relaxed and spacious and knowing itself to seemingly identifying and moving as a smaller pattern, and how that smaller pattern plays as an attachment or an identification with past and story that gives a sense of me as an individual that has a past and has a story. And then you feel contraction and you're moving within a limited, finite sense of being bound. But here's the glory. In any moment, you are so free, so utterly free, that you are free to be bound and you are free to be unbounded. You are so free that you can be in contraction, or you can be free enough to be in relaxation and feel your vast nature. That's how free you are. You are free to move seamlessly between the finite and the infinite, because your true nature is the infinite, unbounded, that is never touched, but it plays and dances as the finite, as the bound. But you're so free that you're not actually ever bound, even when you're moving as a contraction and as a relaxation. It's just your nervous system either remembering its vast consciousness as universal and infinite, timeless, consciousness remembering itself, or its consciousness dancing in a small patterning that plays in the mental realm as time, space, me, story, past, present, future, right? It's a play. Can you feel all of what we're speaking as a full picture? This is the glory. If you can feel the openness and you can see from the true perspective, you can see the full picture of what is being expressed here. You don't even, you're not closing into contraction and losing the full picture. You're resting as the full picture, and as the vast open field, you can see the finite dance of consciousness in contraction and how it moves in a pattern. You can see it as you're resting as the vast open consciousness. Can feel that some of you are seeing this in its fullness. It's very beautiful. This is the field of intelligence, right? If you can feel this, and you are the openness that can feel and sense all of what is being pointed to. This is true wisdom. This is the intelligence of consciousness expressing its process of experiencing itself, expressing its own process of knowing itself, right? And there's a profundity to recognizing this intelligence, because the intelligence is giving you a quality of not feeling in any way like you need to understand or need to control, or simultaneously that you're not ever out of knowing, right? This intelligence gives you the open, clear perspective to move without ever leaving yourself, because you can be aware of yourself, whether you are in the absolute freedom and unboundedness of your spacious, eternal nature, clear and open as reality, but you can also be completely, utterly abiding in this true nature when the small dance of contraction is dancing itself as the divine Leela, as the play on the surface of life. And you can feel that that is when consciousness has identified itself with a certain kind of patterning that brings forward in your nervous system a feeling of being an individual nervous system. When you are open, you are feeling your nervous system as the universal cosmic nervous system. When you are identified, you're feeling your nervous system, which is never not the cosmic nervous system, but you're feeling it as if it is individual. But when you are aware of this, you're aware that you're never leaving yourself. You're never leaving your universal cosmic nature. Never. You're always infinite, always boundless. even when you are playing the dance of being bound. There is no bondage. There is no true bondage. Great glory. Alleluia. So, habit, conditioned, learned habit to be consciousness that is identified with itself, has a story, a past, a present experience, and a future that is dreamed. And that me is dreaming within that limited context. But all the while, that whole patterning of consciousness is consciousness itself just dancing in a pattern. And so as we come to the felt sense of being existence itself, we open into the immediate recognition of being consciousness that is relaxed and recognizing its vast, infinite freedom. And consciousness itself remembers within its own conscious dynamic field, which we call knowing, this is who I am. This is who I am in truth. I never have been that small individual nervous system. I never have been the story and the small patterning of consciousness. I've always been the vast consciousness that is pure, that has just been playing as a small dance. But now that I know my vast, infinite, unbounded nature, now that there's a remembering of who I truly am, it doesn't matter whether I'm dancing a small pattern dance or whether I'm floating as the great ocean. It doesn't matter whether I am the vast ocean or just dancing as a wave. I know my true nature is the ocean of consciousness that is whole and pure and free. Freedom itself, not a person having an experience. Freedom itself, consciousness, is akin to being the water of the ocean. Whether the water is a wave, a waterfall, a puddle, coming out of a tap, whether it's frozen as an ice cube, whether it's an iceberg, whether it's the ocean, a river, whether it's raindrops, it's always water. This is consciousness, right? It doesn't matter what it's dancing as. Is it dancing as good, bad, ugly, beautiful? Is it dancing as past, as present? It doesn't matter what it's dancing as, red, blue, green. It doesn't matter whether it's dancing as male or female. It's genderless. It doesn't matter if it's dancing as being from a certain country or race. It's before that. It's free of all of that. It doesn't matter whether it has any preferences. It's before that. Preferences are just a pattern in consciousness. Pure consciousness is before that. Who you truly are is before every single way of being defined. Check for yourself here now, as the conscious being aware of itself. Confirm that you have no gender. You are not male or female or non-binary or genderless on a human mental level. You are before all of that, right? You're before all mental concepts. You are not the color of your skin. You are not the country of origin. You are not religion. You are not beliefs. You are none of that. Feel and confirm in your own consciousness that you are before that you belong only to the self. And you belonging to the self is the same one self that all beings belong to, that you are not definable in any way. You are before definition. You are before labels. You are before the narrative begins, because the narrative only begins with the first I thought that says, I am something. It will start with, I am either male or female. I am, and this is my name. I am, and this is my life. These are my beliefs. This is my foundation. But this is where we move from the vast openness. It's like landing a plane, right? If you can be very conscious when you wake up in the morning, it's like you're landing a plane. If you can move through the layers of your consciousness, coming into identification, out of deep sleep in the morning, you will feel like you're landing a plane. Try not to land the plane. Don't land the plane. Do not become. But if you can be very aware of it, you'll start to feel when your vastness takes on gender, name, story, the first thing, past, beliefs. You're starting to land the plane. It's getting really shaky. And before you know it, your nervous system is loaded with anxiety and stress of the story of somebody's past, right? You're just taking it on. You're putting on a costume every morning. Every morning, you're putting on the costume again that you've been putting on your whole life. And you're taking on a sense of contraction and individuality and a nervous system that's holding stress, worldly stress. At the end of the day, as you're falling asleep, you know that feeling where you're starting to drift? Stress is falling away, stories falling away. If you can fall into emptiness before you fall asleep, you will sleep as the aware being. Consciously undress your nervous system as you're falling asleep. Let go by just coming to the felt sense of being, and you will let go of everything. You will let go of story, attachment to past, future. You'll let go of attachment to experience, of being someone that is in bed falling asleep. You will let go of all of your beliefs and concepts. Let them all fall away as you just come to being, the felt sense of being, openness, openness, openness. Story falls away, name falls away. While you're in deep sleep, do you have a story? Do you have a name, a gender, a religion? Do you have any beliefs? Do you have a past or a future? No, of course not. So you undress of all of that. Your nervous system releases. Let us say, some nervous systems, of course, hold an attachment, and then you fall asleep in identification and you dream out your stresses. You create a dream realm. If you let go completely, you don't dream. You don't dream really anymore. And sometimes you can dream because you're holding a quality of collective, but really you don't dream anymore. You're dreamless because your nervous system is not holding any identification. It's beautiful. So we're speaking of a lot of beautiful, beautiful things. The intelligence of consciousness, and how intelligence of consciousness, how pure consciousness plays and dances as an individual. And yet it never ever leaves itself. So this is why this invitation constantly comes forward, to never ever leave yourself, right? And these invitations to play and explore, your own consciousness, as you wake up in the morning and land the plane, as you fall asleep at night, before you actually fall into deep sleep, come to being, come to the being, come to openness. Let go into openness. Let sleep happen in openness of being. You will start to notice that if this can happen on waking, you will feel more restored and enlivened because your sleep is not burdened. So rest as openness, and in this openness, know yourself as the openness. Rest as emptiness, empty of content, empty of all of that story of individuality. Knowing that you can move in the world as a pattern of consciousness without identifying. You can remain as openness and dance. But you never ever have to leave yourself. It's this deep remembering that you are pure consciousness. You never ever leave the wholeness, the purity, the immaculate being that you are. And resting in this purity, you are freedom. You are freedom itself. And when you are resting as freedom itself, let's say when you dance in the play of life as life itself, you are constantly, let's say, in prostration to life as life itself. And in that you're receiving life, but never leaving yourself. And where the nervous system gets triggered and identifies, it's because the attachment to past has come in, where we speak of this old stress in the nervous system that comes forward. We say, is it familiar? Do you recognize it? It's old feelings. Do you recognize that you felt this before? It's because the stress in the nervous system, your nervous system is being triggered, and it's bringing in a remembering of past. And that's why we say, if you don't attach to the story of past, and you just let the stress of the nervous system just be released, just let it unravel without the story, then you're just clearing that patterning in your nervous system without identification happening, and you're refining and releasing that patterning. And then when that patterning has released, it won't come back and attach you to past. So the deeper that you come into your true nature and you rest as pure consciousness, the refinement process is the refinement of your nervous system so that you can rest deeper and deeper in the timeless being that you are without being pulled out by attachment to past, without being pulled out by relationship with your story, right? So if you can feel the resonance of what's being spoken here, there's so much beauty in recognizing the intelligence, the process of consciousness, knowing itself and moving within itself. So just to feel yourself here now, right? We take away all of the languaging that could create any distraction. And we're speaking here now in a very, very simple way about consciousness. Where consciousness can understand itself, it can understand its own intelligence, right? What we could say is that consciousness has different ways of expressing itself in order to invite itself into itself. It can express itself as intelligence. It can express itself quite devotionally. It can express itself in a very pure way, like as inquiry, right? It can express itself in different ways to call all of the different flavors of itself, because the patternings of consciousness have many different flavors. It's not a one size fits all. You can't just speak in one way and it will call all of itself in. It speaks in many, many different ways, saying the same thing again and again in order to call all of itself into itself. So you will notice that sometimes some ways that it expresses itself resonate and land more deeply than others. And it's not because there's a right or a wrong or a good or a bad, but it means that consciousness is just expressing in a way that is touching the consciousness, let's say, that's your unique patterning, and pulling itself in using a certain resonance to land into a deeper value, right? Can you feel that piece of the intelligence? It's beautiful. That the expression, the resonance, when the resonance meets itself, like to like, it becomes one. It gets pulled into itself. It remembers itself, right? The glory is that when it doesn't recognize itself, it could create a polarity that could bring forward a different patterning of consciousness. It could bring forward a pattern of a trigger in the nervous system. It could bring forward a pattern that judges, right? But that in itself is glory when it's seen for what it is and it's received as sensation. So it doesn't matter what expression comes forward, it's always offering something to itself, always, right? And this is, as you come to see as the vastness, as the wholeness, the relaxed field of infinite consciousness that's unbounded. This gorgeous felt sense that you are so free as freedom itself, that you are free to be free, and you are free to dance as life in any configuration. The deeper the freedom, we could say this is the knowing that is in process, that there is only God, there is only the glory. And when you know this self, this oneness all the way through, you are completely free to be in any configuration because you know the oneness, you know the glory all the way through. And this starts through the refinement of the nervous system, right? The refinement of the nervous system plays out as individual person learning to be present, usually through some kind of sadhana, meditation, different practices, asana, pranayama, or practices in other traditions that bring you to presence. It brings the person, the sense of person, to presence, to come to focus, to concentration. It brings the person to an ability where the individual nervous system can relax enough to hold a quality of presence where consciousness, let's say, witnessing consciousness can watch the moving, changing. This is the first opening. So these kind of practices bring us to a nervous system that has the refined ability to be able to witness itself, witness its moving, changing. That's presence consciousness, witnessing consciousness, conscious awareness consciousness, we could call it, or witnessing awareness, many ways of describing it. But this is where there's a felt sense that you can be aware of the mind and the body you're witnessing, right? This is beautiful, you're witnessing. The next deepening is where consciousness can hold its own presence and can keep coming back to its own presence and experience its beingness and feel a sense of alive knowing. And it glimpses and tastes, but it doesn't necessarily go all the way through, right? But it recognizes, it comes to a familiar knowing. And this gets deeper and deeper and deeper. At some point, this falls all the way through where consciousness remembers itself and knows itself so deeply that even if it feels like it's moving backwards and forwards, there's a depth of presence, there's a depth of knowing, right? There are many, many subtle kind of levels and possibilities within this, different little variables, let's say, as this is opening. At some point, there's a complete shift where consciousness knows itself so deeply that where you're seeing from is always the vastness. You're always the vastness seeing as awareness. So let's say in this is another way of saying it, is the witness that witnesses the moving, changing. We could say that the witness wakes up to itself. The witness recognizes that it can witness itself, and then it disappears. That first witness disappears so that the witness is everywhere, right? So that you are the witness, right? You're not someone experiencing the witness, right? So you're all going to recognize different qualities of what's being spoken, right? You can feel like you're witnessing, but there's someone witnessing. At some point, the feeling of being someone witnessing opens to you are the witness that is everywhere. You're still witnessing, but there's no sense of your being a person. You know without question that you're the pure consciousness and you're aware of everything. You're aware of the person, the character, but you know your essence, you know your true nature deeply enough. And you cannot ever forget that. Even if you're being pulled into identification. So still the nervous system can be pulled into identification. In that, there can be a quality of forgetting, but never, ever a complete forgetting. You never, ever leave your knowing. And that gives you a ground of being where you never leave yourself, and you're able to receive what's happening in life with more ease, more smoothness. Okay? And then the process of refinement happens, which is that you know yourself as the cosmic universal consciousness knowing itself, and then life acts as that which refines, it purifies and refines, it refines. And so that you know yourself as being everywhere, and then you start to recognize yourself in everything. Let's say mood by mood, thought by thought, everything starts to dissolve into a deeper quality of oneness. Deeper, deeper, deeper. And as this is happening, consciousness is shifting. And at some point, consciousness itself can shift all by itself to knowing itself, its substance, its essence, in and as everything. Still, the nervous system can bring forward attachments to past and get triggered because there's still a refinement out of that story, that conditioning is still happening. But consciousness itself can start to remember its essence, quality, with a deeper oneness, right? And this is opening to the field that we call Atman, the self, the true self, right? Because let's say when you feel yourself everywhere, it's as if the objects and the thoughts somehow still have a subtle quality of separation. And so the consciousness knowing itself has to go deep enough. You have to remember deeply enough that you know your essence nature in and as everything, that there's no differentiation, right? And then there's only one. There's a knowing of oneness. But here, there's still the self referencing itself as everything. The self knows there's only the self, but it references itself in everything. It's seeing itself. It's constantly referencing itself. And as that refines and refines in the, let's say, the intelligence of knowing itself, it opens to a quality where the Atman knows itself as Brahman, right? The Atman, the self, knows its God nature. It knows its oneness with a quality and a purity. It actually doesn't experience itself anymore as anything. It doesn't feel like it's everywhere or everything. It knows itself and feels itself to be nothing, right? This is different to the first emptiness. This is the nothingness of Brahman, right? The Brahman is the self experiencing itself as nothing, let's say. Sometimes it gets called no self. We could also say that it gets referred to as the self in its fullness. Ramana would call this the self, the holy self. Some traditions use different languaging. Some traditions would maybe call this no self, beyond self, something like that. So this is what you can feel here, is this is consciousness in its journey. When consciousness refines and refines within itself, it actually comes before itself. So when it knows itself as nothingness, it's prior to consciousness. It's refined its consciousness that's refined itself so fully that it knows what it is before it becomes consciousness. And that's why there's total freedom in Brahman. That's why there's total freedom in Brahman, is because consciousness has refined itself so fully that it remembers its oneness. It knows only itself. It's got no sense of having any kind of impurity, let's say. It's refined itself. And then before, as this vast field of God, of Brahman, deep within Brahman is something so spectacular, is let's say it's the divine light of divinity that even gives rise to the nothingness. And this is the divinity. This is the incredible divine light that we refer to as pure divinity, the glory. It's God in its most godly, supreme glory, let's say, right? But the amazing, miraculous, profound beauty is that this knowing, this divine light is recognized in a way similar to Brahman knowing only itself, that it's absolutely everything. It's all that there is. It's just exactly the same, that the light, the divinity is all that there is. And that is why what we are speaking of is like a refinement of consciousness, remembering its absolute essence, to remember its divinity, recognizing that it's all there is, and recognizing that it's all there is. Of course, everything is that. It's all there ever is. Whether it knows itself as that or not, it's what it has always been, right? So you know your divinity. You know the light that you are, because you always are that. That's the profundity that you are right now. Whether consciousness is consciously awake all the way through matters not, because the truth is the truth is the truth. But this that we're speaking of is consciousness consciously opening to itself all the way through, relaxing, 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 refining, 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 coming to the most incredible, beauteous divinity that is the supreme glory, right? This is all there is. And there's such a simplicity to it, such a simplicity to it. So as these words come, it's only ever to receive the resonance of what is being spoken. If the mind takes hold and tries to create levels, layers, states, it tries to achieve anything, it tries to have a journey, it will carry you right away and you've landed your plane and you're back in personhood. So do not even attempt to understand with the mind. It's just to receive the resonance, the glorious resonance of being yourself, because you already are, and you already have a knowing, a taste of this truth. Let's say all the way through, you already have a taste. And this is what we're speaking of right at the beginning, where we speak of through the life, you will have fallen into certain tastes, glimpses, rememberings. You're always falling in to the same self. But we can have flashes and glimpses and tastes of very, very deep flavors, even where consciousness doesn't seem to have opened, because it's not progressive. It's not progressive. It's happening. Sometimes I speak of this axis and the vertical axis, like consciousness opening to itself and the heart opening to itself, which is this refinement. But what it's happening in this huge, 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 incredible, like gyroscopic light dance. So you can touch into all different possibilities. Every opening is unique. It's the one consciousness opening to itself and refining in order to know itself all the way through, that it dissolves into the knowing of itself, that all that remains is the knower, Brahman as the knower, right? And then in that absolute oneness, it's all there is, only God, all there is. So feel where you are right now. Feel where you are. Feel the truth of who you are. Feel your simple existence. Feel your consciousness, the cosmic nervous system, remembering itself, attuning with a resonance of itself, and simply being itself. In the openness, you discover the openness that is the true nature. There's a simplicity, a simple, pure beauty that is so beyond mental understanding. It's more simple and it's more subtle. And that is why the mind cannot understand, and only consciousness itself can understand through knowing itself. So we speak of coming to the knowing. Coming to the knowing feels like your knowing, your direct experience. And in this knowing, you find faith, the same faith that you have always had. All of these are clues that are laid, left, illuminated by the light of divinity. The light of divinity is illuminating exactly what is needed for this refinement to fall, like collapse in on itself, keep collapsing in on itself, keep relaxing into itself, letting go into itself, surrendering into itself, devouring itself, right? All the way through, just letting go and letting go and letting go and letting go. It's all happening all by itself in the unseen. And yet the alive intelligence, which is the process of the refinement, the refining process, the intelligence is coming more and more alive and online. And you can feel that intelligence as the intelligence of your own consciousness, knowing itself and ever deepening and refining into itself. So be here. The silence that is, even when the silence is flowing within itself, silence still is, just is, just is. Mm. 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 Everything is resonating in the finest resonance of divine light. Everything, because that is the ultimate truth. The finer and finer the subtle perception can be, the more this knowing is where you are living. Not as someone, of course. You move from being the felt sense of being someone to being consciousness, refining and refining and refining, living its subtlety, finer and finer, living its oneness, living its divinity, living its glory. And then it matters not where this is living. That which is never, ever, ever changes, right? Never, ever changes. Never, ever changes. Never, ever changes. Change is only happening in appearance, not in essence. Not in essence. So if we speak of this on the level of consciousness, from cosmic, vast consciousness, plays as an individual nervous system, that consciousness never, ever changes its purity, never changes its purity, even when it's dancing in patterns. God never ever leaves God, even when it's dancing as consciousness and in patterns. Divinity never ever changes. The essence, it's like the deepest, purest value of absolutely everything is resonant divinity. So, the grand tour of consciousness and beyond consciousness. The beauty is to feel yourself here now, right? You're not someone having a meditative experience. It can be a sense of having been very engaged, listening without a listener, receiving the resonance. It's to feel that everything that is being pointed to is here, the totality, the supreme total reality is right here. Nothing is hiding. This truth is right here, right here. And so it is to feel the resonance of your own consciousness without trying to qualify it, define it, give it names or labels or get somewhere, just to be here and rest as the openness, the emptiness. Do not identify with anything. Rest as the vastness. Rest as the infinite. Rest as the timeless. And recognize that even if the play of time and space is happening, you are utterly free and unbounded. Always, without question. Always, utterly free and unbounded in truth. So feel the resonance of your true nature, alive, silent, maybe flowing, maybe dynamically flowing. Does not matter. Do not create anything out of it. Just be here, resonating, resonating and resting as the emptiness.